In the early 90s, I was working at a hospital in Moscow, Idaho. We had moved there recently, and I got this really cool job as a unit clerk in the medical unit of Gritman Hospital. I went to work on a Tuesday, and I worked evening shift, so I worked till midnight usually. And the nurses had been kind of complaining about this one patient we had. Her name was Olga. She was very disagreeable. The nurses really had a hard time dealing with her, which really piqued my interest. My work was greeting people, doing doctor's orders, being just kind of the secretary to the nurses. So this evening, probably around 9 o'clock, I was finished with my work. I ventured down to her room. I can still remember the number, 312. I knocked on the door, introduced myself, and asked this lady if I could visit with her for a few minutes. She said, sure, come on in. I found her to be very beautiful. She had long gray hair. She was in her 80s, and I knew that she was dying. We just chatted for probably, 15 or 20 minutes. And as I try to do a lot is ask people, start talking about Jesus or church and ask them, if they have a relationship. And she said no, she didn't, that she'd gone to church as a child, and that she really hadn't thought about it too much till I started talking to her. So that was kind of the end of our conversation. So the next day I went to work on Wednesday, and I finished my work, couldn't wait to get back to her room and talk to her. Same scenario, about 9 o'clock at night. I started talking to her some more, and I could feel her softening and being more interested in what I had to say. So I said, Olga, I says, have you ever asked Jesus into your heart? And she said no, and I, basically told her, what it would take and that what he'd done for us with forgiving our sins. And she said, I would. And so I jumped right into the middle of this. I think she was probably the first person that I'd led to the Lord. I was in my 40s. And so we prayed and hugged. I was feeling like the Christian of the world. Boy, all I have to do is swoop in and people just come to the Lord. Feeling pretty proud of myself. The next day I'm at work, which is Thursday, and I'm sitting at my desk. It's probably around 4 in the afternoon, and this gal from our church in Moscow, name was Kathy, she came up to my desk, and I said, Kathy, who are you visiting? And because I knew there was no one from our church in the unit, it was a very small unit. Kathy said, well, I came to visit Olga. And I'm like, really? And she said, I have been praying for Olga for probably 35 years. She's my neighbor. She is so hard to get to. And she says, we've invited her to Easter, Christmas. I've taken food over to her. We've mowed her lawn. We've done everything. And I all of a sudden I got this glowy feeling. It's like, okay, Lord, you've got me. I says, well, wait till you hear what happened. And I told her that Olga had accepted Jesus. And we're standing there like jumping up and down, crying, the whole bit. She went and visited Olga. God plans things out for years. And I happened to be the lucky one that got to lead her to the Lord. But Kathy and her family, and probably a lot of people, have been praying for Olga for years and years and years. And it's the seeds that were planted that's important. I was just the sower. And for all the thousands of seeds that are planted, people need to realize that that's their work. And there's just a few of us that get to come in and finish the deal. Olga passed away about 2 weeks later, and Kathy and I went to her funeral. It wasn't at our church, but another Christian church. And it was a funeral that we were able to get up and talk about the person. And I got to stand up in this church and say, this lady accepted Jesus 2 weeks ago. She is now in the presence of God.